talk about some more irregulars in the preterit. Another thing that Spanish does not like to have are three vowels next to each other. So unless one of those vowels is silent. So for example, with the verb creer, okay, creer is an ER verb, so its stem is this. Wait a minute, let me make that a different color. This is the stem, okay? And this is the ending that you're going to get rid of. And because it ends in ER, we're going to end up using these endings right here, okay? So if I start conjugating out creer, and I didn't do anything to it, I just followed the rules, it would be, hold on 1 minute, let me actually move this. Okay, because creer is an ER verb, I'd be using ER ending. So if I started to conjugate creer for yo, it would be, I'd keep my stem and then I would just add the I. For tu, I would keep my stem and add the ISTE. For el usted, if I didn't do anything, if I'm just following the rule, here's my stem and I would add I-O. Okay, for nosotros, for vosotros, and for ustedes, ellos, ellas. Okay, now the problem is when I do this, let me move it over here so you can actually, so everything kind of lines up. The problem is I just got through telling you that unless the vowels are silent, which none of the vowels in this verb happen to be silent, Spanish does not like to have three next to each other. And I've got that a couple of times. I've got that here, and I've got that here, okay? So when that situation arises, what you do in Spanish is you change your I to a Y, okay? So what I should have instead of creio and creieron, which is really difficult to say, is going to be creyó and creyeron. And I will move these into the appropriate place. So let's move them over here. Okay, so when we're conjugating verbs that in their stems have, if verbs in their stems have two vowels next to each other, they have a vowel right next to the ending, and neither of those vowels is a silent vowel, then you are going to want to change your I to a Y in the third person forms for each of them. Okay, and that would happen with verbs like oír, leer, whoops, maybe caer, to fall. So those are just a few, maybe also traer, to bring. So those are a handful of verbs for which this would hold true. Okay, now there is one that has three vowels next to each other that you would not do this with, which is seguir, okay? And the reason is because the G is actually silent. This is the only one that you need to worry about. It's because, remember, G next to an I would have a H sound. And so in order to get the G next to the I and have the hard G sound, you have to put a silent U there. So since that U is silent, you wouldn't do this for seguir. And its conjugation would look like, seguir's conjugation would look like this. Seguí, seguiste. Now I'm making a spelling change in the stem. It actually falls in with my stem changers for the preterite tense, which I'm going to go over next. But you'll notice that I have 3 vowels right here, and I do not worry about putting a Y because my U is silent. Okay, so seguir you would leave alone because the U is silent. Okay, another irregularity are your stem changers. So when a verb is considered irregular, that means it doesn't, basically when it's irregular, you're either going to add endings that don't match up with the endings that you would expect to add. For example, pedir is an IR verb, so I'm supposed to add these endings to it. If I did not add those endings to it, then that would make it an irregular verb. Or I change the stem. So if I did, the stem for pedir is PED, so if I don't have PED as my stem, then it's considered irregular. This group of verbs are called stem changers, which means their endings are going to be what you expect. If they're an IR verb, they get IR endings. If they're an ER verb, they're going to get ER endings. But their stems are going to be changed before you add these endings for some of the subject pronouns, okay? Now, in the present tense, stem changers were called boot verbs often because they were, they made a boot when you did their conjugation. These guys are often called sandal verbs, and or some people call them sandal verbs. So let me show you why. Okay, they're often called, sometimes you'll see verb charts. Over here you see it up and down. Sometimes they're written like this, where you have first person singular, first person plural, second person singular, second person plural, third person singular, third person plural. So they match, so they keep first, so they set it up to where on one side you have singular, one side you have plural, but then each horizontal line represents first person, second person, third person. And they'll call these guys sandal verbs because unlike regular, let's see, I can do a different color. I don't know if you'll see this very well, but unlike, well, never mind, I'm not going to do it. But in present tense stem changers, the stem change happens everywhere but nosotros and vosotros, so it would happen here. And that makes kind of a boot, so they often call them boot verbs. Some people call these guys sandal verbs because the change happens only for the third person singular, third person plural, okay? So therefore, if I tell you that pedir is an E to I stem changer, what that means is that for nosotros and vosotros, it would keep its regular stem, which is PED, but for usted, el, ella, and ustedes, ellos, ellas, you would use the stem PID because this verb is an E to I stem changer, okay? And there's only 2 types. There are either E to I's or O to U's, okay? So for example, you have pedir already done. I could do repetir, and you saw seguir, so maybe I'll do repetir. So here is, let's actually move this. Okay, so if I'm going to do the verb repetir, here's repetir. Repetir is an E to I stem changer as well, and it's actually the E just before the ending that changes, and that's going to be the same for preferir. It's going to be this E that changes, not the first one, okay? So the stems for repetir could be repet or repeat, okay? We would use repet with every subject pronoun except for we would use repet, the regular stem with every subject pronoun except for él, ella, usted, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, where we would use repeat. So this is what repetir would look like. It would be repeti, repetiste, but then it would be repeat. Okay, and then it would be repetimos, repetisteis, and I think I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller so it all fits. Okay, and then it would be repitieron, okay? Darn it. So repetir would look like this. And if I wanted to do morir is like dormir, morir to die, I could do that over here. Here's morir, and so the stems for morir would be mor or mir, okay? And you're going to use mor for all of them except for el usted, where you're going to use mir. So if I wanted to conjugate it out, it would be, mori, moriste, murió, morimos, moristeis, murieron, okay?